Okay, everything looks like it's on, so we're ready to go. We're at Revelation 8:12 is where we're picking up from. We're on the trumpet judgments. And it says, the fourth angel blew his trumpet, and a third of the sun was struck, and a third of the moon, and a third of the stars, so that a third of their light might be darkened, and a third of the day might be kept from shining, and likewise a third of the night. We left off with this last week, and I told you that this is one that it's really difficult to figure out exactly what God does. And a lot of these, you can figure out how he does what he does using the various, laws of physics and things that happen in our world naturally. Earthquakes, hail, lightning, fire, all that. This one is hard to figure out. How in the world does he make it to where the sun is dark 8 more hours a day? That's interesting, because that's all predicated on the rotation of the earth. But if you were to slow the earth's rotation down, we'd lose a lot of our gravity and we might go floating off. And you're trying to, so I sat and I'm like, how is he doing this? About the only thing I could come up with is if God made some huge clouds and dust and whatever that could completely block the sun, but they'd have to not move while the earth rotates underneath, so that the sun would come up 8 hours later. It's already up, we just don't know it because of the clouds blocking it or whatever, and then you'd see it. But the thing, and the reason I think it's got a lot, I just had the verse up there, let me go back. Where I believe what's happening is he's doing something that keeps you from seeing the sun when it rises in the morning, because of this passage in Isaiah 13, another prophecy that deals with this same time period. For the stars of the heavens and their constellations will not give their light, the sun will be dark at its rising, and the moon will not shed its light. And that's very similar to what's being described here, where the day is dark 8 hours longer. So now, so what we're going to have happen now is the nighttime's going to be 16 plus hours long, and the maximum sunlight you might get would be just 1/3, 8 hours. But so now imagine, though, what that's going to do to things like plant growth. Plants have 8 hours less sunlight a day. Okay, and that's a lot in a day. That's like half or more of their light. So that's going to happen. And we've already talked about the fact that we've destroyed all the green grass, a third of the trees. We turned a third of the ocean to blood, and that's where our oxygen comes from, the ocean, the trees, and the plants. So we've got a lot less oxygen to start with and in the air, so the plants and humans, so the plants are doing well, there's more CO2. Now we've got less light, so again, they're even less, and the plants aren't putting out much oxygen, so we're having less to breathe. So things are really, really bad. It would also mean that we've already lost an enormous amount of food production. Nut trees, wheat, corn, all the grasses that we eat. Now, plants are lost on 8 hours of sun a day. They're going to be very sickly, and what they do produce won't be bumper crops. They're going to be kind of sickly crops because they just don't get enough light. And remember way back when we started, there's the 4 horsemen. Then the 4 horsemen, in kind of a way, they give you an overview of the whole period and tell you what's going to be happening during the entire 7 years. And remember, the 3rd horseman was famine. And so God's really serious when he says famine. We've lost an enormous amount of food in this world and food production and the capability that we're not getting back. We're not going to get it back. It doesn't ever say the sun starts shining the full amount ever again for the rest of the time period. Remember, we also have no winds. That means there's no weather, hardly at all. Because it's the winds that make the weather and move the weather around the planet. The mountains have been moved, which means what weather we do have is changed because they direct the movement of the air bodies and all that. So it's a horrible, horrible time. Now, there's something else that affects humans. It doesn't cause death, but it does cause a lot of misery. You've ever heard of SAD? And I don't mean being sad. I mean the disease, seasonal affective disorder. People get it a lot in places like Oregon and Washington in the winter because it's gray so much. But now imagine if it's dark 8 hours longer every day. And scientists have said that's what causes it. It's that lack of sunlight messes up our body rhythms, and then it brings about things like depression, severe depression. Only this isn't going to pass because it's not just the winter. It's from now on that it's going to be dark 8 hours longer every day. Going to be kind of like if you're living in Alaska or someplace really far north, where in the wintertime it stays dark most of the day. Georgia?
That's kind of bizarre that Bill Gates and a lot of his people that are for the green energy are trying to do some of these very same things.
What do you mean?
They're trying to block off the sun, and then
Why? Why do they want to block out the sun?
climate change. Yeah.
Oh, because of the warming of the earth. Oh, I gotcha. Boy, there's some really dumb people out there, you know that? We're going to spend billions of dollars and trillions of dollars for nothing. Because there's nothing you can do about it. I mean, is the earth warming? Yes, absolutely, that's science. Is man causing it? No, there's absolutely no evidence whatsoever. It's a normal pattern, a normal cycle of the earth. And you can spend trillions of dollars and guess what? It's not going to change. You know, you can just look back in history. We've talked about it a bunch of times. All you have to do is go back to the Roman times. That's only the 1st century. We've got recorded history. We don't have to figure it out. We don't have to use archaeology to make stories. It's there. And what we know is their coastal cities are under 80 to 100 feet of water. Hello? That means there's been massive changes on the Earth's weather warming since the 1st century, 2,000 years. Right now, most scientists believe we're going, not most, there are many scientists beginning to say what they said in the 70s. I don't remember if you remember in the 70s. We were headed into what? Ice Age. Ice Age. Well, this tells you how accurate the scientists are. Then we're heading into, we're all going to die because it's too hot. And now we're headed back into the Ice Age again. You know, we also had all those predictions. If you want to find something that's really laughable, go on the internet and look up video of all the predictions made 20 years ago. The oceans were going to be 20 feet higher. Everything was going to be flooded. You know, the Great Barrier Reef was going to be gone. And yet the Great Barrier Reef now is healthier than it's ever been. There's more coral than there's ever been. You know, it's happening all over the world, things like that. You know, so it's very interesting. And by the way, there are scientists, a lot of them, that are finally starting to back away from it. The problem is it's not a scientific issue, and it never has been. It's a political and religious, if you really want to get down to it, issue. Because that's the religion of the people that are behind it, you know. So is it going to change? Probably not. They're going to spend trillions of dollars for no reason. Rather than spending, see, that's what I want. Let's spend the money figuring out how to adapt. That would make sense. Trying to stop it, it's not possible. Can't do it. So, all right. So we've got seasonal affective disorder. And so we're going to have, so during this time of lack of food, lack of sun, all the horrible things going on, there's something else to add to the depression. You know, this would be like being in the far north. Now, I was up in Canada fishing years ago, but I was in the summer. And in the summer, it never gets dark. Boy, that's weird. Going to bed at 10 o'clock and it's bright daylight outside, you know, that kind of thing. I'm not sure I'd do well in the places where it's dark all year kind of thing, you know. That must be a little tough to deal with. Let's see. Here we go. Oh, when does most crime happen, day or night? So if you had 8 hours a night, what happens? More crime. Absolutely. Yep. All right, verse 13. It's not bad enough. We got more. Don't worry. Then I looked, and I heard an eagle crying with a loud voice as it flew directly overhead. Woe, woe, woe to those who dwell on the earth, at the blasts of the other trumpets that the 3 angels are about to blow. So we've got the 3 last ones to go, 5, 6, and 7. Now, this ought to be one of the scariest verses in the entire Bible, because think about what we've just seen happen in the 7 seal judgments and then the previous 4 trumpet judgments. And then this eagle, which it's probably enormous, it's probably not a normally sized eagle, this supernatural eagle is flying through the sky. Everybody can see it and everybody can hear it. Not only is it a giant eagle, what else does it do that's abnormal? It talks. That's right. And it's saying, whoa, whoa, whoa. And what it's doing is it's describing each of the next trumpets. And what it's saying is, you think what just happened was bad? It's about to get a whole lot worse. And that's what's going to happen next. Part of what happens is when we get to the bowl judgments, the final ones, they become very personal. These have been very global, you know, flood, earthquake, hail, and lots of death. But they haven't really been personal. Now they're going to get personal not right now, but when we get to the bowl judgments, because that's where you get the sores, the things that are us, our own bodies. And that's what's going to happen with the next trumpet. It's personal like Job. You get the sores and pain and suffering and all that kind of stuff. Up to this point, like if you were rich, you could insulate yourself from most of what's happened. You can still get food, you can still get water because you're rich. Well, pretty soon, though, that's going to be stripped away, and it's everybody. Well, it's everybody who doesn't have God's mark on them.
So you just mentioned Job, is that correct?
Yeah.
It's like he went through a lot. Now, I don't know. Well, a couple questions. Was he being tested, or was he being actually grown into a better person?
Yes.
Through that, yeah.
Yes and yes. The question was, what about Job? Was he being tested or was he being grown? And that's what God always does. He always tests us to cause us to grow. They're connected. And yes, if you read the book and pay attention, Job starts out one way and he ends up a totally different person. He starts out actually quite arrogant about his righteousness. He's also very arrogant about his humility. Isn't that funny? I'm the humblest guy around, kind of thing. And in the end, what does he say? I opened my mouth, I'll shut up now. I thought I knew stuff. I don't know anything. But the most important thing is, at the end, he says, before I had heard God far away, but now I have seen him. So it went from an external system to an internal worship of God. That's the major change. Before it was sacrifices, offerings. Now it's personal relationship. And that's what God is all about. He was creating a personal relationship. It's one of the most informative books in the Bible about the Christian life, to be quite honest. And unfortunately, too many people don't read it. Now, I know that the part in between like chapter 2 and chapter whatever, 38, 39, when you get to the end, is rough because that's all the whining. All that God's doing there is he's showing us how much we whine. Because it's only a chapter in the beginning and a chapter in the end that has all the good information in between is all whining. And we do. What would we do if we were Job's place? We'd whine, just like he did. We whine now, and we don't have nothing like he did. If I wake up and it's too hot, I whine, and I have air conditioning and that kind of stuff. But yeah, at the end, he's a very different man. Very different man. Because, like I said, he now has a relationship with God, whereas before he just knew of God. It's like the difference in the modern times where if you attend a church, you hear about God, you learn about God, you know about God, you think God is great, but you don't actually yet know God. And then when you get saved, you understand what an enormous difference there is between what you knew and what you now experience. And it's the same with Job. He went from an external to an internal. It's also a phenomenal picture of what God was doing with the Old and the New Testaments. The Old Testament is an external temple, priests, sacrifices, offerings. Then Jesus comes along, the ultimate offering that fulfills everything in the temple, and now it's personal relationship. It's exactly what happened to Job. It's a beautiful picture of what God's going to do in an individual's life. So, okay. We've got this angel flying through the sky, and now he's telling everybody, if you put it in our vernacular, he would be saying, you think it's been bad before, it's about to get a whole lot worse. 3 times. Whoa, whoa, whoa. And the reason he says, because what's the third woe? It's the 7th trumpet. What does the 7th trumpet do? It brings in the 7 bowls, which are the worst of the worst for a person, individual. Okay? Bowls, the last of the 7 bowl judgments. All right, chapter 9. We are flying through this book. And the 5th angel blew his trumpet, and I saw a star fallen from heaven to earth. There's a lot of this, boy. There's a lot of stars falling out of the sky in this book. And he was given the key, but notice what it says next. I saw a star fallen, and he, not a meteor, this is being a person. He was given the key to the shaft of the bottomless pit. He opened the shaft of the bottomless pit, and from the shaft rose smoke like the smoke of a great furnace. And the sun and the air were darkened. Now, how many times have we heard that so far? We are doing an enormous amount of darkening the sun. But think about it. Where does all life on earth come from outside God? The sun. Without the sun, no life. With the smoke from the sun, the air were darkened with the smoke from the shaft. Then from the smoke came locusts on the earth, and they were given power like the power of scorpions of the earth. They were told not to harm the grass of the earth or any green plant or any tree. So apparently they're not normal locusts. But only those people, here's the key, who do not have the seal of God on their foreheads. So who's going to suffer? The people who are not sealed. And we learned previously in the description of the churches, the description of the church at Philadelphia in chapter 3 tells us that every child of God has the name of God, the name of Jesus, and the name of Jerusalem on them. We are marked. So the Christians, this doesn't happen to. Only those who have the mark of the beast. Because from this point forward, God is going to begin to show a dramatic black and white difference between his people and Satan's people. Up to this point, everybody has suffered. Everybody's had loss of food, loss of water, loss of oxygen. But from this point forward, the Christians aren't going to suffer like everybody else is. And of course, that makes them love us all the more, right? They're suffering and we're not. Oh, yeah. They were allowed to torment them for 5 months, but not to kill them. And their torment was like the torment of a scorpion when it stings someone. And in those days, people will seek death and will not find it. They will long to die, but death will flee from them. See what God's doing? You're going to suffer horrible pain so bad you want to kill yourself, and you can't. There is no escape. Remember we talked last week about letting God take care of vengeance for us? He's way better at it. You see that he's way better at it. You can't even kill yourself. You just have to live through it. And there is nothing that will stop the pain. Nothing. And then there's all these Christians walking around who aren't in pain. You know, probably trying to help everybody. And they'll probably still try to kill us because that's what happens during this time period. Now, I've never been stung by a scorpion, but I have friends who have been stung by a scorpion. Anybody here been stung by one? How was it? Pretty horrible, huh? Hurts. I've heard it hurts and burns and all kinds of stuff. And the littler, the worse. Yeah. Now, lucky for us, we live someplace where we know what scorpions are. You know, if you're from the east somewhere, they don't ever see scorpions. You know, they have no idea what's going on here. I know when I was in Tucson one time, I don't know why, but since I was 10 years old, I have pretty much nonstop shoveled something. Dirt, gravel, something. I have shoveled more than I think any human being on the planet. Wore out both shoulders and both knees. But I was doing that at a friend's house. We were moving a bunch of dirt, and I threw a scorpion about that big. I've never seen one since. I don't know what it was. But I threw a shovel of dirt, and I saw something in it. When it hit the ground, it was a scorpion about that long that was yellow and green. And I have never seen one since. Usually they're, like this. So, or maybe it was all the drugs I was taking before I shoveled. I don't know. Yeah.
Piper's classroom at UCS.
Big one?
Like it was like this big, and they said it was like yellow and red, and it literally came through the wall at their classroom, and he started to walk on the floor, and Miss O freaked out.
I can imagine.
And one of the kids apparently he grabbed the tail of the scorpion and grabbed the bottom of where the legs were, and he just picked it up, opened the door, and threw it out.
Yeah, as long as you get a hold of the tail, you're pretty safe, But it's funny, I love God's sense of humor. The smaller it is, the more dangerous it is. You'd think the other way around, just like a baby rattlesnake. A baby rattlesnake is far more deadly than an adult because they can't control their venom. So they just shoot it all, kind of thing. So, all right. So now we have another star that falls to the earth. This is where stuff in the Bible can get really confusing because star can mean a meteor. It can mean a star in the sky, a planet, but it can also mean a being. A being, an angel, a demon. In this sense, it's a demon. Okay? And it says he fell from heaven to earth. Well, what happened when Satan fought against God? Who went with him? A third of the angels. And how does it describe them? They fell from heaven. So we have something similar here. He's a fallen angel. And he's got the key to the abyss. Remember the abyss? Hades, hell, Gehenna, right? And the abyss. Hades, That is the prison for unsaved people who die, waiting for the great white throne judgment that comes at the end of the book of Revelation. That is described between the rich man and Lazarus. The rich man's in Hades, Lazarus is in heaven with Abraham. Also, about that story, remember, the rich man can see Lazarus, but it never says Lazarus can see him. Abraham can, and he talks to Abraham. He never interacts with Lazarus. Because if you could see the people in Hades from heaven, would it be heaven? No. We wouldn't, there'd be a lot of suffering because we'd be upset about people we know in Hades. But they can see into heaven because that's a part of the torture. Remember how I described air conditioning? If you've never had air conditioning, then you don't know that it's miserably hot, and you don't know that it could be any better. It's 10 times worse if you go somewhere that has air conditioning and you don't, and you experience, and then from that point forward, what do you always remember? Oh man, it was so much better than the air conditioning. Just like the Jews, the Israelites, when they left Egypt. Oh, we had tons of meat and life was great. And it's like, really? I think you're remembering a different Egypt than we remember. We were prisoners, slaves, barely had enough food to eat,
When I came home from Vietnam, it was like, I could be making this up, but that's what I got from there. So I guess like 130 degrees. 130.
Yeah.
And
100% humidity.
Exactly. In the summertime, or whatever the season that was, it would rain every time.
Yep.
2 o'clock afternoon for 2 hours. And when I flew in there before I landed in Vietnam, I'm looking at the area and it was monsoon season and everything was underwater. I said, I'm not going to make it.
Yeah.
But when I got back, I was used to the summers here.
Yeah.
I could handle it.
Yeah.
Better.
Yeah, because you've been in something a lot worse. Yeah. All right, so this is a being that falls. He's given the key to the abyss. Now, Hades is, let me go back. Hades is where the unsaved dead are kept, okay? Gehenna is another name for it. It just depends on if you want to use the Greek or the Hebrew, okay? Now, there is no purgatory, and I kind of think that's where maybe that idea came from, is because there is a place, a prison where those people are kept that are unsaved. They kind of thought there would be one for saved, but it doesn't say that. The Bible says when a Christian dies, what happens? Where'd you go? You go be with the Lord. Poof. Now, the only difference is we don't have our new bodies yet. So whatever form we're in, we're not real sure of. Probably just our soul. Or the flip side of that is, remember when you die, all the stuff in this world ceases to exist. We go into the real permanent world where there is no time. So when you go in there, all of this could already be over. Let that twist your brain around a little bit. When you start thinking about, you go into a period where there is no such thing as time, something we can't even imagine. But as for that, for all we know, it's all over and we're living in heaven in eternity, So, Mary?
It says that the dead in Christ will rise first.
Yes.
So if we're already there, how can we rise?
Well, because of the fact that God brings our souls back around, that's when we get new bodies. When we rise, that's at the second coming, not the second coming, that's at the rapture with Christ. And that's when we get our new physical bodies. And that's when God unites our bodies and our souls. And that's what it means by they'll rise first. Okay? And then we'll be right behind them and get our bodies. So he just sends the souls to be in their new bodies. Well, they're new bodies. They're not old bodies fixed up. They're totally different eternal bodies. They don't look anything like these bodies, and they don't operate anything like these bodies. I mean, they have an anthropomorphic shape like this: arms, legs, head, eyes. But the Bible says that we're going to be like Jesus. Remember, Paul says, we don't know what we'll be like, but we'll be like him. We have seen Jesus. He has white hair. His eyes are full of energy. His body radiates energy. He looks like glowing bronze, right? And that's what we'll look like. Whatever that is, that's all the description we get. But it will be very different. All right, so this is where the abyss, this is a prison that holds the worst of the demons. I know we have a hard time believing that there are demons and then really bad demons, because as far as we're concerned, demons are as bad as it gets, but there are. In fact, we know that the demons that married the human women and had babies with them that produced the Nephilim of the Old Testament, the Bible says they are in the abyss. And many others are in the abyss that have done different things. We're not told the rest. But when demons commit certain sins, God locks them up. They can't be left alone. Like getting with human women and producing hybrid humans that are part human, part demon, which describes the great men, they call it, not David's great men, but the great men of the Old Testament. And also probably where our idea of giants, that every culture on the planet has a memory of giants, meaning there were giants on this earth. And there's enormous evidence, it's all been hidden, but there is enormous overwhelming evidence there were giants. Just the fact, if every people group on the planet, in all their diverse languages and environments and customs, all have the same memory, it cannot be made up. Because you don't make up the same memory. Yet every group has dragons, every group has giants. I've told you before, the Aztecs, the Incas, the Mayans, they all have told the Spanish, we did not build these pyramids. We did not build these huge structures. We found them. Or, depending on which group it is, they said there were giants alive back then and our people worked with the giants to make them. But it was the giants who designed and moved and all that kind of stuff, moved the stuff. Which is very interesting because all ancient architecture is megalithic, they call it. Meaning enormous stones, mega stones. Stones we cannot move today. And yet they try to convince us they moved it with manpower and logs and grease. And you're like, I don't think so.
Why does, I can come up with this correctly, why does a lot of these historians and stuff try to ignore the fact that something supernatural has created that, and they're thinking that it was man? There is something.
The question Michael's asking is why they hide all this stuff? Because it destroys the evolutionary timeline. You got to remember, all of archaeology and all of science has absolutely wedded themselves to evolution. It is the only answer. If something comes along that cannot fit in there, it destroys the whole theory. So everything they've created over the last 200 years falls apart. That's why giants, there is no place for giants. That doesn't fit ape to human or single cell to human. It doesn't. There's no place for it. And it's funny that you have all of these reports from the late 1800s, early 1900s, thousands and thousands of newspaper articles, pictures, people that are highly reputable, lawyers, judges, doctors, that kind of stuff. They all have signed affidavits that they found 11 and 12-foot skeletons in Ohio, in Pennsylvania, and all these places. China, everywhere on the earth. And yet as soon as a university or a museum is called, it all disappears, never to be seen again, and they swear they never came. Even though all these people said they were there and took the stuff. All the mounds back in Ohio and back east, those are all burial mounds. And almost all of them had giant skeletons in them. And then what they do now is, this is why I love archaeology closes places. Well, that clearly tells you there's something they don't want you to know. Why would they close it? And they would say, well, we don't want the public destroying it. Sure, that's nonsense. They close it because it reveals something that doesn't fit the evolutionary timeline. Just like advanced technology. They find it all the time, and they hide it because it doesn't fit the time period. Actually, I have a name for it. If you ever see this, I have a whole book of this. It's pretty funny. Ooparts. Ooparts. Oops! That artifact doesn't belong there. And it disappears. Have you ever seen the tiny airplanes that they found in, I think it's Peru? They're little tiny gold and silver, like they would be hanging on a necklace. They look exactly like a modern jet. I'm talking tail, ailerons, wings, stuff that wavy like this, like you would make for fire coming out the back. They find this stuff and they bury it. Or, you know what I've told you before, anything that doesn't fit, what does it become? Religious. Oh, that's a religious thing. They don't know anything. They're just guessing from what they find. But they act like it's religious. It's like, okay, well, what's its purpose? To worship the gods. Which God? You start getting specific, they can't. But it happens all the time. I mean, there's a lot of nonsense in what we call the fringe history in science, but there's a lot of stuff that's true as well. But they are so sold on the whole evolutionary timeline that they will not allow anything to change it. And yet there's enormous, eventually I think it will. It won't go to creation, unfortunately. But eventually there's going to be so much overwhelming evidence they don't have a choice. And they'll have to figure out how to make it fit with evolution. So, but anyway, we're off subject there. Now, we know that the abyss is filled with the worst of the worst demons, okay? Demons are bad enough. These are the demons so bad God had to lock them up. Well, what's this angel going to do? He's going to let them out. Just like Venezuela did with us. And Cuba back years ago, where they empty out their mental institutions and their prisons and they send them here through our porous border for us. Same kind of thing. Only they're coming out. So now imagine, you can't die, and God's going to bring the worst of the worst out of the pit. And they're also scary as all get out. Not just painful. Okay? Let's see. They look sort of like locusts. You know what a locust is? We don't have them much out here because there's nothing for them to eat in the desert, but, other places do. They have enormous swarms with billions and billions and billions. And what do they eat? Everything. If you read some of the reports from the Midwest during some of the really horrible ones, those things even eat like the doors, not just green plants. When they get hungry enough, they'll eat the dang doors and fence boards and they'll eat anything. And they can destroy everything. I mean, there's nothing left when they're done. Not a leaf, not a blade of grass, nothing.
Jurassic World.
Oh yeah, in Jurassic World, the idiots create prehistoric locusts that are like this.
That's a good idea. That's great.
So, and that goes well, as you can imagine. Jeez. So, now, what's funny is God tells them, don't act like normal locusts. You're not going to eat grass. You're not going to eat plants. None of that. What you're going to do is you're going to sting human beings and make them suffer for 5 months. That's what's going to happen. So they don't touch the grass. Well, there's no grass. They don't touch the trees or whatever plants we have left. Okay, so they go around stinging people. I'm going to guess you get stung more than once because there's hundreds of billions of these things. And it's last time we're down to about 6 billion people on the planet, 5.5, something like that. And then you're in horrific agony, and there is no way to get comfortable. There is no way to you can't drink enough, you can't take drugs, painkillers don't work, and you can't kill yourself. You just suffer for 5 months. While all the Christians are walking around without any pain or suffering whatsoever, which, like I said, makes them love us all the more. So you can imagine they really want to kill us. Now, it's only going to get worse from here forward. Remember? Woe, woe, woe. And this is the first woe. So, now I've always found the fact that you can't die really amazing. I always want to know, as an engineer, what are the mechanics? How does this work? If you go and jump off a building, will God stop you from jumping? Or, more likely, will you jump off, fall on the ground, break all the bones in your body, and be in really horrific pain, but not die? Or try to shoot yourself. And all you do is damage your brain, but not die. And that's most likely what would happen. And so can you imagine, talk about frustration and people going nuts and crazy and, all that kind of stuff? Oof.
In that time period, if the Christians are not suffering as non-Christians, when the non-Christians, is it too late for them to accept
No.
Jesus?
No. The only time it's too late is when they take the mark of the beast. The Bible says once you take the mark of the beast, that's it. You're done.
What is the mark of the beast?
It's the number 666. And it's on your forehead and on your hand. Most likely meaning it's in your mind, on your forehead,
You don't think it's going to be
or a chip under your skin. And the 666 is the access code to the worldwide communication system that is some future form of the internet through which you have to do everything. And without that 666, you cannot buy, sell, work, nothing. That's how the Antichrist takes over the world. All you got to do is take over the internet. Even now, if you took over and controlled the internet, what would happen? You control the world. You do. There's lots of weapon systems tied to the internet. That scares people to death, especially with AI coming out. And they're afraid AI, is going to take over the computer systems and start launching our weapons on us, as all the old science fiction movies have said. Calvin?
One of my teachers told me that www, World Wide Web, in Greek means 666.
I have no idea if that's what it means. People do a lot of stuff like that, but what we know is he takes over the world. You know, and it will be through the internet. That's pretty obvious. You know, take it over economically. Because it's easy. I mean, if you take a country over or the world over economically, you don't destroy anything. You don't kill people. You don't, you want to keep everything. War is way too expensive. I mean, I told you last week, think about Ukraine and Russia. I looked at a financial assessment of that war, and the people doing that assessment don't believe that the Ukraine can ever recover because of the amount of money they have lost and because all their buildings and businesses are destroyed. It will take generation after generation to actually get their economy back up and going and functioning. It's not that they won't function, it's just the amount of wealth they've lost sets them so far back, in being a strong economy and country. Michael?
I kind of had two. Okay, so, all right, so say all this happens with the mark and all that stuff, right?
Mm-hmm.
So so say hypothetically, everything was cut off. We couldn't buy anything unless we had this thing, right?
Right.
You either choose Satan or you
Right.
get food, right? So what are we supposed to do?
The Christians have to create a black market economy, a barter economy. And black market, today we always think of it as being illegal. It just simply means an economy outside of the established economy.
And store stuff.
And it's usually considered illegal, But that's where we would have to go to barter between ourselves for food. Some Christians would have to grow food. Some would have to build things. That's the only way it'll work. My personal opinion is that during this time period, the Christians will probably be out there taking care of and feeding the people that are in horrible pain and can't function. Because that's what we've always done,
And there's only something you can take care of.
Yeah.
And I agree with that, but you said something? What was that?
Well, you said start saving food now, and I said it won't make.
No, it won't make any difference.
What do you mean?
Well, because it's 7 years long.
Oh,
You
I
can't
see.
really store food for 7 years. A few things you can, but even if you save it, they can come take it from you. But the other flip side of that is God will make sure we have a way to have an economy that we can function.
So trust God.
He gave the Jews manna and quail in the wilderness, and he'll do the same with his children during this time.
And it doesn't mean that we should not do anything.
No, we should still be out there taking care of the people that are in pain, trying to lead people to Christ, all that. Now, hopefully we won't be there. We believe in the rapture. That's what I should put up here for a prayer. Oh, God, really make sure there's a rapture.
Make sure I was.
Because we seem awfully close to the, it really, so. All right. Verses 7 through 12 of chapter 9. In appearance, the locusts were like horses prepared for battle. On their heads were what looked like the crowns of gold. Their faces were like human faces. Boy, that'll freak you out, wouldn't it? You look at this bug and it's got a human face on it. Wow! Their hair like women's hair. Doesn't say hair like my hair. And their teeth like lions' teeth. They had breastplates like breastplates of iron. And the noise of their wings was like the noise of many chariots with horses rushing into battle. They have tails and stings like scorpions, and their power to hurt people for 5 months is in their tails.
Yeah.
They have as king over them the angel of the bottomless pit, the abyss. Okay? His name in Hebrew is Abaddon, and in Greek he is called Apollyon. Let's see. The first woe has passed. Behold, 2 woes are still to come. So this is the taste of what's coming. Now, the reason he has 2 names is, one is Greek, one is Hebrew, as you often find in the Bible. The word Apollyon is destroyer. And the word Abaddon is destruction. And I didn't actually put which language is which. But it's destroyer and destruction. What it really means is the destroyer of destruction. Meaning he's going to destroy everything. And he's the king of the bottomless pit. So even in the bottomless pit, God has order and structure. There is a king, a ruler, and so on and so forth. God never is involved in chaos. Never. Remember, throughout the Bible, he says, I am the God of order. I am the God of completeness. I am the God of perfection. Not chaos. Whose world is chaos? Who's the master of chaos? Satan. And the second, us. We're the masters of chaos. Because, God makes the earth, it's all perfect. What happens as soon as you interject humans into it? Chaos. Absolutely.
I think one thing we're lacking is sometimes, I'm just going to say it, it's unpopular. that we actually have, sometimes we have moments or a year or a life of arrogance. And I think if we could just let go of the arrogance, we'd be better.
We have a lot more than a moment. Michael was saying we have a problem with arrogance. Yes, that is one of humanity's biggest problems, is arrogance. Is we think we're the best thing on the planet. That's what most people think. Thing is, who's the only one you're fooling when you think that? Everybody else knows the truth. So.
But it's a painful thing. It's like we think, or I'll say we because,
Yeah.
as a human, we think it's a cool thing.
Yep.
It's really not.
But
We're tricking ourselves. But if
the
we
only
let
person
it
we're
go,
fooling
we have
is
more
us.
peace.
Calvin?
Wait, are people being able to kill them?
Nope.
No.
Nope. Now, I put up 3 pictures because we have no idea what they really look like. These are what some artists have tried to come up with. I believe they're actually probably the size of a locust. I don't think they're huge or anything like that. So here's one, here's another. This one's huge. This one's more like a demon warrior type thing, but this might be close, only much smaller. They've got bodies kind of like horses. What he's saying is they're like an armored horse, because in that period, some horses had armor. Because you see, there were some guys that got smart and figured out, let's shoot the horses. For a long time, they wouldn't kill the horses in battle. And then they got smart and said, let's kill the horses, so now you got to armor the horses. Because if you can knock the horses down, then the guys on them can't fight, and so on and so forth. But anyway, and it says they have, when you're asking if they could be killed, it says they have breastplates of iron. It's telling us they're armored. You can whack one probably, and it might bounce off the wall, but it won't hurt it because it's heavily armored. And it's supernatural. It's not a normal animal kind of thing. So, okay. Now, so this is something like this. They're going to be on the earth for 5 months, stinging people and causing horrific. Now, those of you that have been stung by a scorpion, imagine that it never goes away for 5 months, day and night. You can't sleep. You can't function, all of that. Also imagine what happens to the world economy. We got a tiny taste, I think, with COVID. Look at the mess COVID made we still haven't recovered from. And that wasn't where people couldn't function. That was because of governments and whatnot. But now imagine where everybody that's not a Christian, which pretty much means everybody that holds any kind of office, runs a company, any political office, because we would be locked out of all of that, can't function. The economy stops, basically, during this 5 months period. It'd be pretty hard to work if you're in agonizing pain and you don't sleep. You're not going to sleep much, So,
Can I ask a question?
what?
What does God say? I might have missed that. What does God? Okay, we're going to go through this. Hey, hypothetically, we're going to go through this, right? Okay, you believers and non-believers. Okay, but if you're a believer, then how do you make it if we have all this destruction of food?
There's only one way. The question is, how are the Christians going to survive? One way. God says, I will provide all your needs. And he doesn't say, except in the last days. He says, I will provide all your. In fact, in the New Testament, he says, I know what you need before you ask. You don't really even need to ask. I mean, that's what he says. We do, and he says that we can, but he says that you don't need to. To be quite honest, normally, if we ask God for things, not helping somebody, but I mean things, cars, what we're really saying to God is, whatever I have, you didn't get it right and give me the stuff I really need, because now I need you to give me something different. And we don't think of it that way. But what did God say? I will give you what? What you need. So whatever you have, what is that? What you need, absolutely. So what do we need to ask for?
What we need.
Nothing.
I mean,
Because
we don't.
what we really should pray is, God, help me see what you're providing and be thankful for it. That's a much better prayer. Because God, how would you feel if every day your kid came to you and said, will you feed me today? Every day. Every day. After about 10 years old, what would you do? Well, I've been feeding you every day for the last 10 years. Of course I'm going to feed you. But see, that's exactly what we do to God. God's like, have I not protected you? Well, yeah. Have I not provided for you? Yeah. Then why do you keep asking for it? See? Fortunately, he's more graceful than we are, And he said, it's fine. If that's what you want to do, that's fine. But you don't need to. That's the key. I'll be quite honest with you. We can gauge the maturity, spiritual maturity of our church a lot by how the prayer requests go. What are we most concerned about? Here, I'm going to give you a challenge. Go home, find a prayer in the Bible that's about somebody's health or pain. There's only really one mention that I know of, and it's where it says the prayer. Remember, it says that a prayer of a righteous man availeth much, and if he sinned, he'll be forgiven, and he'll be well again, and all that kind of stuff. Outside of that, what are all the prayers in the Bible about? What's really important to God?
To know him.
Yeah, and to know him well. So the prayers in the Bible are almost always about spiritual growth. Praying for the growth of other people. Praying for their strength, their comfort, their ability to deal with whatever God's bringing in their life. Look at all the prayers of the New Testament where Paul brings up prayers. They're always for, because think about it. We pray for like physical things. Food, protection, whatever. That's all temporary. It's all temporary. We're the only thing that's permanent, eternal. And God only cares about that which is eternal, because that's all that matters. You know, to think of it, our time period of the time the earth was created until the time the earth is destroyed, however long that may be, 8,000 years, whatever, what is that to God in time? So what happens in there, is that horribly important? No. What's important is the eternal things. I'm not saying that God doesn't care. He does. I'm just saying he's already promised to provide every need that we have. Emily?
So gratitude would be prayer of gratitude.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, most of the prayers in the Bible are about attitude, about you want to go scare yourself, go look at the number of prayers for perseverance and endurance. And why do you need perseverance and endurance? Because good stuff's happening to you? No, because difficult stuff's happening to you. There's a lot of that. What did Jesus say? They hated me, they'll hate you. They tortured me, they'll torture you. They killed me, they'll kill you. He told us up front, it's not going to be easy. He did. You know, he warned us up front. Now, I'm not trying to depress everybody, but he also said, I'll carry you through everything that comes, and you can have joy and peace and contentment and all those things in the midst of a situation where you probably shouldn't be able to. That's why Jesus says, I give you my peace, not as the world gives. The world can only give peace by giving you a peaceful situation. The cessation of hostilities, anxiety, and worry. That's what we call peace. But God says, I give you peace in any situation. And in fact, I'm going to throw you into really terrible situations so that you can learn to have peace. Absolutely. Well, there's an old adage that's kind of scary. God will stop at nothing because he loves us so much to make us like Jesus. But get the part where he says he'll stop at nothing to make you like Jesus, because that's the goal. And God always says, what does he always say? Here's the hard way and the easy way. Easy way, do what I tell you. Hard way, make you do what I tell you. You know, like, go back to Jonah. Go preach. I don't want to. What happened? Well, he got to live in a fish for 3 days and then vomited out, and what did he still have to do? Yeah. It's not like he suffered his time and didn't have to do it. He still had to do it. You know. And I told you before, what's my favorite part? Or after he rocks through the city. I mean, you talk about an astounding story. He goes to the capital of the Assyrian Empire, which has just got done devastating the northern part of Israel and killing most of the people and deporting the rest. He goes to those bloodthirsty rulers, walks through speaking the gospel, and what happens? The whole city repents. We read that, and I don't think we put enough awe and wonder into that, you know. And you know what happens is all the violence in Israel stops. And that's when the northern kingdom can recover and get back on its feet and have wealth again. It's amazing. And then that's why he doesn't want to go. These guys killed all my friends and so on and so forth. You know, my favorite part is after the whole city gets saved, you would think he's out front dancing before the Lord saying, this is great. What's he doing? He sits down on a rock, puts his face in his hands and says, Lord, I knew you were a loving and kind God and you'd forgive these idiots, and I'm really upset about it. Because he didn't want God to forgive them. He's all bummed out over it. But we can kind of understand his perspective. These people murdered and killed his friends, his family, his government, because he was from the nation of Israel, the northern country. Okay. Oh, wait a minute. I left off part of the verse. I normally draw myself an arrow to tell me. Did I? I did, and I ignored it. Oh, gosh, it's 4 minutes after, guys. We're going to miss church. We got to stop there.